Hey guys, welcome back to Live Consciously with Kelly. If this is your first time watching, thank you so much for joining me. If you are back, welcome back. I have a really great video for you guys today. So as you may or may not know, July is Fibroid Awareness Month, so I wanted to take an opportunity to highlight a common diagnosis that's not frequently discussed in the public eye. So I reached out to a family friend who is also the founder of the White Dress Project for her to share her story, to talk more about her organization, and to provide some helpful resources on what we can do, and we includes me as well, and also to provide some resources to women who might be going through this, who think they have fibroids, who might be recently diagnosed, or who may have been dealing with this for a while. So I just wanted to sit down with her, have a girl talk, chit chat, and really just bring awareness to this very, very common diagnosis. Her organization is all about women empowerment, which definitely aligns with the mission and the values of Live Consciously with Kelly. So I thought it would be awesome to get a chance to speak with her. So the video is a bit long, as you can tell, so I included the timestamps in the description box below if you want to check out a specific part of the conversation. The whole video is really, really great. It was such a powerful, enlightening, funny conversation. She was very candid and honest. You can see her passion in the way that she talks about her organization and her story. So I hope you guys check out the whole thing. If you don't get through the end of the video, please check out the whitedressproject.org for more information. And I hope you enjoy. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm doing an interview with the founder of the White Dress Project, Tanika. Tanika, thank you so much for taking the time out to speak with us today. I just wanted to ask a few questions so people can get to know you and to also learn more about your organization and the awesome things that you're doing. So the first question I have is if you can just share your story, tell me a little bit about yourself and the White Dress Project, and we can just start there.
Okay, absolutely. Well, thank you, Kelly, for having me. I'm so excited to be here with you all. Every time I think about doing an interview or someone asks me to do one, I'm so excited because we know that sharing like through grassroots, sharing through friends, podcasts, articles, any way that we can share a woman's story, suffering and managing life with fibroids, like it's really, really important to do so. So.
Right.
I appreciate the conversation because like you alluded to, not a lot of women are talking about it, but at the White Dress Project, we're really trying to change that.
Yeah.
And through that, we allow and encourage women to know that their stories are important, that they should be their own best health advocate, and that they don't have to suffer in silence. Those are the things that we really, really try to impress upon women because it's so important. Like it's so easy for all of us to feel alone when you're going through uterine fibroids. And I should say that for any chronic illness, you know, it's a very lonely place, but to the contrary, so many women are dealing with it.
Right. Yeah,
so it's important.
I think it starts with the conversation, 100%.
Right.
No, people think, like you said, that they're going through it alone until someone brings it up, and then that's when you hear, "Oh, me too. I experienced that too." And then people feel empowered to like talk about it more and be okay with bless you, and be okay with sharing their truth and their story. So it definitely starts with conversation and not being afraid to talk about it and sharing your truth and your experience.
Absolutely. And I think, you know, it's funny that you said that because it's like, I was thinking about it the other day and I was thinking that where did we get like this silence, shame, stigma about issues below the belt? And I think sometimes it's just a woman thing. Like it's I want to put it on culture. I want to put it on, you know, most of our upbringings. But I've found across cultures, this is kind of the same thing. Like we just don't talk about issues below the belt.
Right.
And I say we need to completely change that.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Yeah. So to begin with my story, I started experiencing symptoms of fibroids probably around age 14 or so.
Oh, wow.
So it's very interesting when I hear, that fibroid symptoms start in your reproductive years, because I'm like,
Mhm.
my periods are out of control
Yeah.
from the time I got them. And I got my period pretty late, around 13.
Mhm.
So I would say that, my symptoms of fibroids really started, the bulk symptoms really started around the time that I got my period. Now, I
I didn't know
can't
that
directly.
it affected young women that young. I honestly didn't know that.
Absolutely. And the thing is that it affects young women at that age, but I don't think that we know that scientifically for
Okay.
sure.
Yeah.
The symptoms of heavy menstrual bleeding, uh, often urination,
Mhm.
all of those things, painful periods, all of those things, I think, are things that we tell ourselves that it is kind of like the journey to womanhood, right?
Mhm.
It's what we're supposed to be
Right.
going.
Yeah. That's
If
true.
you if
Mhm.
you bleed heavy, it's just like
That's
that's
just
what it is.
yeah, that's just what it is. Figure it out.
Exactly, exactly. So I think a lot of times we are normalizing those symptoms and really not recognizing that no, you're not supposed to bleed like this.
Right.
No, your periods aren't supposed to be out of
Right.
control.
Mhm.
No, you aren't supposed to be in a debilitating pain when your period comes on.
Yeah.
But like I said, we kind of normalize it, and we hear stories and we're like, well, I guess this is just how it's
Yeah.
supposed to
Right, right. Because you hear, oh,
be.
everyone's period is different. So you think, oh, maybe I'm just
Right.
different. This is just how my body responds to it, not thinking, hey, this could be a red flag for something bigger.
Exactly. And
Mhm.
so to our younger girls, especially teenagers, that's what we want them to recognize. Like if you start to see these things, it doesn't necessarily mean you have fibroids,
Yeah.
but it just means that, hey, something is not going the way it should.
Right.
And that's what we want to preach more, which is just recognize what's happening in your body. Just become more aware of what's happening in your body,
Right.
because while it may be nothing, it's better to be nothing than years down the line you have these growing tumors in you.
Gotcha. What was the moment, I guess, for you that did you kind of notice right away, hey, something's not right, let me go to the doctor? Did you not really say anything at first? And then you're like, okay, this is like excruciating pain. I can't deal with it. Let me try to go. Like what was your thought process, I guess, at first?
Yeah, what's interesting about my story is that my mom had fibroids. So
Mm.
I was aware of
Gotcha.
what those
Okay.
symptoms
Yeah.
were. And so was she, right?
Hmm.
But still, when I was having these symptoms, it was like, oh no, it
Yeah.
can't be fibroids. Like, no.
Right.
And for me, I just kept life moving. My dad died when I was 13. So 13 was like
Yeah. Heavy year.
changing.
Mhm.
Yeah, exactly. Life changing year for me. And so once I got my period, I kind of just kept it moving. Like we had to now figure out life without my dad. My mom's an only child. I'm an only child. So we kind of just clung to each other
Yeah.
and just kept it moving. I had to go to high school, then college.
Mhm.
And all this time, I was experiencing heavy, heavy menstrual bleeding,
So nothing
periods.
happened between 13 and college. You just kind of kept it moving and didn't even. Wow.
So, yep, very interesting. And what's even more interesting about that is that I changed my lifestyle so much because of my period.
Mm.
So that's where the no white ever, wearing white clothing ever came in. I always traveled with pads or extra change of clothes. Like to this day, I still always have a pair of leggings in my
Yeah.
car, pads in my car, whether my period is on or not.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, I often talk about the trauma that comes with all of this. Um, but back to the story, I really feel like even though my mom knew, I heard of her experiences, we still didn't think that this was fibroids. So, yes, I dealt with it all through high school.
Yeah.
And I finally went to a doctor, and he told me that they couldn't figure out why I was bleeding, so I needed to do a DNC. And a DNC is the scraping of the uterus, and they usually do them after you have miscarried. And I believe that's the process. And you're trying to get the remains out
Mhm.
of the woman. So it's a very invasive process. Like you're literally scraping the uterus. And it's also a process that, you know, for teenagers, when you go and do a DNC, your parents tend to think like, are you having sex? Because like, are you
have that
so then
conversation and yeah.
Right, exactly. So then I had to have that whole conversation, like, no, I'm not having sex, mother. I don't know. This is, I don't have any idea why I'm bleeding this way.
Right.
So obviously the DNC wasn't the right approach because I believe that they were symptomatic fibroids that were starting. So went to college, and then my first year of college, I had to have a blood transfusion because I was bleeding so much. And through college, probably about till 25 or so, I had four or five more blood transfusions due to my heavy bleeding. So I was like, okay.
So at no point in that time they didn't think, like that never came to the doctor's mind, like, hey, this is what it could be.
No, never got that diagnosis. And what's interesting is that women will go to the doctor twice. 41% of women will go to 2 or 3 doctors before they're diagnosed with fibroids. And so it's disheartening to think like all this time, all these blood transfusions, anybody knows that blood transfusions aren't like things we're just trying to get out here, right?
Yeah.
So having and knowing that I've had so many is also, you know, daunting on me. Now total, I've had 7 in my life. And, you know, some people are like, never, not even one blood transfusion ever in my life. And all of it has been as a result of iron deficiency anemia. And that is often a symptom of fibroids because fibroids feed on your blood. So it was always feeding on my blood, feeding on my body. Therefore, my blood stores are low. So probably around 25 or so, I was like, okay, something's not right. And I do want to say that the doctors before weren't always OBGYNs. I think I went to one OBGYN. So they were.
Question, I guess, not to interrupt, but as far as diagnosing fibroids, is it typically a specialist? Is it your OB? Is this something that they check during like your annual visits and like things like that, or is it?
Yeah, so that's the thing. It is with the OBGYN, but it's not like an annual pap smear type of situation. There is an abdominal test that you can do, and I'm not a doctor, don't play one on TV, but from what I've learned going through this whole process, there is an abdominal test that you can do, but the best way to see them are through MRI and through vaginal ultrasound, so that they can, you know, look at what's happening directly in your uterus, because they grow in and around your uterus. And that's why they're often connected to fertility and pregnancy, because they feed off of estrogen, which is the same thing that a baby feeds off of, or a baby has a healthy place to live. So they grow and can grow at the same speed as a baby because everybody's eating the same thing. So we're all getting fat, right?
Right.
So yeah, so after I finally heard a doctor tell me that, yes, you do have fibroids, I was told then to watch and wait. And that is, you'll hear doctors say that that is a treatment plan of sorts. But we just did some programming last week through the White Dress Project called Dialogue with the Doctors. And one of the doctors said that one of the important things to recognize is that if a doctor tells you to watch and wait, you have to watch, because fibroids grow. That's what they do. And at the White Dress, we often talk about, like, why do doctors say that? Because eventually, they will grow.
That was my question. Like, okay, watch and wait. What if it seems like, because you mentioned because they feed off of estrogen and we have that as women, that it's going to grow eventually. So is early detection that you have fibroids not, what's the question? Like, the fact that they found it, is there not something that they can do right then? Or do they not recommend that you take action until it gets worse? I guess, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's really the recommendation, that you don't do anything until it gets worse. And like I said, I'm not a doctor.
Yeah.
Each case is different.
Yeah, yeah.
But for me, it was kind of like, well, they're not bothering you right now. Don't bother them. But I was like, but they're bothering me though.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
yeah, 'cause
something,
this
please.
heavy menstrual bleeding, this debilitating pain, like it's connected to it.
Yeah.
But I think maybe why doctors mention or suggest waiting and watching is because the uterine fibroid sparing treatment options are not prevalent, right? So there are only about 3 treatments that are out there that are treatment options for fibroids,
Okay.
and they're all surgical. So now there are advancements being made for pills to lessen your bleeding, lessen the pain. Obviously, birth control has been used for years to lessen the bleeding and lessen the pain. But then there's some birth controls that have estrogen in them. So sometimes it's a catch-22, but the treatment options are all surgical because there's nothing really to be done about them unless you go into your uterus and surgically remove them. So I think there is a thought process with doctors that says that everybody doesn't need to be to have surgery, right? So it really depends on, what do you want your outcomes to be? Do you want to be a mother? Do you not want to be a mother? So then maybe hysterectomy is an option for you. But I would argue that there are a lot of other treatment options that we need to develop for women suffering from fibroids other than surgical. Now, I will say there are a group of doctors across the country called minimally invasive gynecologists, and those are the ones that go in and do myomectomies, which is the surgical removal of fibroids. They do them laparoscopically and minimally invasive. Oh, wow. So for example, my second surgery, I've had 2 myomectomies. I had one in 2013 and then one again in 2018. And my second surgery, the surgeon was able to go in through my belly button. Oh, wow. So basically they put a catheter and a robot and tools that are able to see my uterus and are able to pluck the uterus that way.
So what was your recovery like, I guess, after? Are you relieved from your symptoms for certain, I mean, I know it's different for everyone, but I guess your personal experience, what was your feeling and recovery like?
So my first surgery in 2013 was what they call the bikini cut. So a full abdominal, very similar to like a C-section cut.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So that was my first surgery, and it was horrible. Like, it was like full 8 weeks, just like you had a baby, like full 8 weeks of
not being able to lay back and like
exactly
going up the stairs. Yep. All that.
Exactly. So just like, you don't even realize how much you use your abdominal muscles until
exactly.
Until they cut into them. So that one was pretty hard, very painful. The second one wasn't as bad because there was no cut. But you have to understand that somebody is still going in and moving your abdominal muscles around, messing with your uterus. So that was probably about 6 weeks, I would say. So it was still pretty, pretty impactful.
Yeah. And was it after your surgeries that you developed the idea for the White Dress Project? When did that exactly come about in your experience?
Yeah, so it was during my first surgery. Okay. And I don't know at the time if it was the drugs or what was happening, but I just remember getting so upset. I had come home, I was recovering. It was probably like a week into recovery, and I couldn't get up the steps to get to my bedroom, and I was just so upset. And I started thinking, like, I just don't understand, if there are so many women who suffer with this, why is no one talking about it? No one's asked me to do a marathon, t-shirt sales, like nothing. So I just Right. I just didn't get that. But if I mention it, it's like, girl, everybody has fibroids. And I just didn't find that to be
The right.
encouraging. Right.
Yeah.
Like, why? And I felt like there are so many other things that we choose to talk about that we bring awareness to, but I just didn't understand why fibroids was not getting that, awareness and recognition.
Yeah.
So it was probably like the next week I was able to make it up the stairs. I went into my closet and you just, when you're recovering, you're just bored and just trying not to think about the pain.
Yeah.
So I was just looking around my closet and I'm like, I have no white in here. And I'm such like a girly girl, just, just like every color dress, every color pair of shoes. I'm like that girl. So for me, not having white and then having the epiphany that I had sacrificed for me something that I like all these years just became very heavy on me.
Yeah.
And, I often say that, no white in a closet for someone is not a big deal. But it was a big deal for me because of who I am. And I just recognized how that was just one area of my life that I had sacrificed for fibroids. And I didn't get it. Like all of this for these benign tumors, like I don't.
Exactly.
Yeah, it just struck me. So that's where the name came from, the White Dress Project, because I wanted to use it as a symbol of hope. And, there are a lot of people who say, well, obviously when you have fibroids, you don't feel comfortable wearing white. But I wanted to turn something negative and something that I had not had in my life for so years and sacrificed, something that was important to me. I wanted to turn that into something positive. And
yeah, that's what I was going to say. Just kind of talking to you now, reading your website, hearing your story, it's just beautiful that you're able to take something like a white dress that for you was a representation of kind of like pain and your frustration of what you went through for 13 years, I guess, at that point, and taking it and turning into something beautiful and something that's empowering for women and making a whole organization out of it. Like I admire that so much that you were able to do that. And I think it takes courage just to be able to do that and share the story with other people and just to kind of say, hey, like I'm going to wear white now and I'm going to empower other women to do so too and not be afraid or uncomfortable to do it. So I think that just like says so much.
Absolutely. And I love the way you put all that together. Like it just warms my heart when people get it. You know what I mean? Like because it's such an important thing. And like I said, you may say, okay, you don't have white, wear black, who cares? But for me, like you said, it was a representation of how I had sacrificed something in my life that I enjoyed, which are clothes and being girly. And I just recognized that I wasn't doing that.
Yeah.
So it's really proved to be like a powerful symbol for us.
No, I love that. Can you tell me, I'm just making sure I cover my questions here. Can you tell me, I guess, some of the larger events that you do with the organization or some of your proudest moments or best accomplishments since you started the organization?
Oh, this is so good because I am like always so excited to share what we've done because I'm really, really proud of it. We're not the first fibroid patient advocacy organization. There were a couple before us, but this movement is so grassroots that it hasn't had its uprising like cancer organizations or lupus organizations or endometriosis organizations. And I say uprising, not that this is to be celebrated, but uprising meaning that we're conversing about it more, that more people are aware of the condition and we're not calling this fibromyalgia or fibrosis. It's two totally different things, but that people are aware that you potentially do have someone in your life that's suffering with this. So one of our proud moments is that we are the authors of legislation declaring July as Fibroids Awareness Month. And we got that passed through the U.S. House of Representatives. And
amazing.
to us, that's so exciting because all these people now are talking about Fibroid Awareness Month, and we're like, hi, we're the ones that over here. And it's obviously, it's such a joy to hear that, like, as a buzzword now for people. And while it is, you know, just recognition, it's so important to us because it allows us to know that our legislators acknowledge that this should be and is something that we need to talk about.
Yeah.
So it's so important for us, and July is just so special to me because that's when I had my first surgery. And it's when I thought of the idea. People often ask me, like, why July? And that's the exact reason. Like, I thought of the idea in July. I was in recovery in July. I had my surgery in July. So it just means a lot to me that I can look back on my surgery anniversaries and know that I turned my pain into power and testimony, and a support place for women.
Right. And I think it's awesome, and congratulations. I know this year is 5 years, right?
Yeah.
Sorry, that's awesome. I know some of the events that you do, is it like your anniversary type of party that you do every year? Can you tell kind of more about that? What's involved? I know this year with everything going on, I think it probably looks a little bit different.
Yeah.
Kind of more about just your past anniversaries and what things people can look forward to at those events, and kind of what you have going on at the end of this month.
Yeah, so pre-COVID, we used to have an event called Night in White, and it was so fantastic because everybody would come out beautiful in their white dresses, and we would share patient stories. We would have something called the Blossom Award, which is named after my mom, and my mom had fibroids, as I told you earlier. So I wanted to do something that honored her journey and honored her sharing with me her story. She lost two sets of twins to fibroids, and I was the only one that made it. And she also had a hysterectomy. So like I said, I wanted to do something that honored her story and her legacy. So we have the Blossom Award. And now that we are in this COVID state, you're right, things do look a lot different for us, because what I've learned about our community is that we are still very, very private. So, you know, we are trying to encourage women to share. We can do this, publicly speak out about it. But the reality is that it is a mindset shift, because we haven't been taught that, right? I remember when I was starting the organization, my mom said to me, you know, in her sweet Jamaican voice, she was like, don't tell anybody that you had 27 fibroids removed for your first surgery. And I was like, Mommy, but you know, I didn't put them in there myself.
Right.
But for her, it's still the stigma of, you know, what's wrong with your daughter? And any mother, you know, just wants to see their child in the best light.
Yeah.
But she, due to her upbringing, she, you know, recognizes that not everybody would look at it as something positive and powerful.
So on that point, I think the other day you posted, or whoever is over Instagram, there was a picture that was posted of like a woman in the shower with a blood clot. So when I first saw it, I was like, oh my gosh, what happened? So then I read the caption. It was talking about like this is a common thing when you have fibroids, and just kind of sharing, I think it was the person's caption that they wrote about like what they went through. And I think that picture had like 700 comments of people just saying like, me too, this is my story. And I was just like, that's awesome. And I feel like as a woman, no one wants to really talk about that. Just like, that's just not a thing we go through. And if it is, just kind of keep it to yourself. Because you said below the belt is kind of like, people don't want to talk about it. It's like taboo. But I think that it just like posting pictures like that, or being just candid about your experience, and that was just like super candid, but it was in a good way. For people to talk about it and be like, oh, okay, me too, and being able to share their experience and not be afraid to talk about it in spite of what they think other people think. And I think a lot of times we're afraid to say something out of fear of just people kind of looking at us a certain way or judging us or whatever the case may be. But I think more often than not, it helps to empower other people to also want to speak up.
Exactly. And I'm so happy you brought that picture up because it has like sparked a revolution.
Yeah, 100%. I saw
Yeah,
it. Oh my goodness.
yeah, there was so much conversation. And I promise you, in all transparency, Kelly, when I was about to post it, I literally, like, it literally took like 30 minutes. I was like, okay, no.
Right. Because I
No,
think just kind of how you said, just I don't know if it's like a cultural thing or
yeah.
how we've been conditioned as women. Even I think there was another article that I read, which is super random, about was it Norway? A country in Europe recently started to change the name instead of saying feminine.
Oh, New Zealand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I knew it
Yep.
was one of those countries. So they're just calling it like saying period or using the word vagina and like not making it seem weird anymore. And I know for some people they're like, why is that even a thing? But I think that's a huge thing because it's like we're kind of conditioned to not say anything. And if we do, maybe to like our friends or something like that, but not in a public space or not on the internet and stuff like that. So I thought that was crazy. It was a good step in the right direction, but like you said, you've had women kind of share their stories and sparked a whole revolution and conversation there about it.
Exactly. And the thing about the New Zealand thing that's so important, in the article, it talked about like, what is a sanitary napkin? You know what I mean? Like, and it just pointed out, like, oh my God. Right. Yeah. Like we've been calling these like pads, like what is a sanitary napkin? So it just like rang true to me that, yeah, for so long we've tried to like camouflage and make it dainty. But it is what it is, right? And that's going back to the picture is what it is. And the young lady that I reached out to her to ask her if we could share, and she was like, absolutely, because I just want more women to feel comfortable sharing this. It's not that I don't think women know, because obviously they know, but we're just not talking about it because of fear of what? It being too gruesome and graphic for whom? Like, 100%. I saw something the other day that was like 50% of the population can understand what this picture represents. And it's so true. Even if you're not bleeding that way due to fibroids or any kind of reproductive health issue, you understand just bleeding in general, and you understand going in the shower. I remember learning like as a child that when you went in water, your period would go away. And it's like, so it's like so not true. But it's like those things we kind of like grow up with.
I think it has a lot to do with like sex education as a whole. Like I feel like we kind of go to our friends and it's like it's not good information half the time.
No, it's not accurate.
Like it's terrible information. It's not accurate at all. But I think, I don't know, just kind of having this conversation with you, I feel like fibroids in general, and I think I was mentioning before I started recording, I didn't really know a lot about it until like a friend was impacted by it. And I think that's a normal, because it impacts so many women. I think it's a normal thing that should be talked about, whether with your doctor or in school, talking about women's health. Like that should be a class in itself, just women's health and things like that. Just for us to know, we learn about, okay, conception and how that's done and name the body parts. But other than that, they don't teach us anything else about health and taking care of ourselves and birth control and things like that. Like there's not so much about that. So all you can rely on is the internet, which of course, not all that information is reliable, and just kind of talking to people and definitely not getting accurate information. So that's why I think, again, just having organizations like yours and how you have doctors that come on your Instagram live and you have videos and they are sharing factual information and things like that. It's so helpful just to have that knowledge so that we're equipped to be able to bring awareness to it and to help advocate for other women.
Absolutely. I love that your idea of we should have a class on women's health. Like I completely agree. Right now we're working with the School Nurses Association to try and do that, which is to try and revamp sex ed, right?
Yeah.
Like we need to learn more than how to put on a condom,
Right.
and that you can get pregnant when sperm and egg meet.
Yeah,
like
that's literally it.
Like we know how that part goes down.
There's
Like we
more
need
than
to,
that.
the other day on Dialogue with the Doctors, we had a sex doctor on. She's a sex therapist and just like an all-around sex guru. Like she travels the country talking about sex. And she talked about the clitoris having legs. And it was, I don't know if like I'm late on this, but she talked about the nerve endings in the clitoris because we were talking about painful sex because of fibroids. And she talked about the fact that the clitoris has legs, and like the chat went crazy. Like, what? Because I think we've been taught that it's just that top portion.
Right.
But there is an inner portion. Exactly.
Right. I think I found that out like last year, and I'm like, I'm 30 and I don't even like know that about my own self. Like,
right. And that was her point. She was like, we've got to get to know our bodies. And for us, and the purpose of this conversation, it's the same thing that we're trying to impress, that you've got to recognize what's happening with your period. Know if it's irregular. No, it's not just that's how it goes. No, we need to track that. We need to figure it out because your blood flow and your period tell you so much about your reproductive health.
Right.
And I think that if I had known what I know now, I would have frozen my eggs. I would have started eating healthier earlier. Like I would not have had all those boxes of pizza in college. I would have just did things to support my body and support my reproductive health so much earlier, because you just don't know that there is really such limited time in all of this. While you're trying to build a career, while you're trying to be social and have girlfriends and date, and it just becomes so much, and it becomes something that goes to the back burner until it's like urgent.
Yeah, exactly. What would be, I guess, your advice? I know you said you're not a doctor, of course.
Yeah.
But in your own personal experience, what would be your advice to someone who thinks they have fibroids or maybe recently diagnosed, and just their next steps for physical care and mental and emotional care? Like what would you tell yourself, I guess, back when you first
that's such a good question. Yeah, that's such a good question. What would I tell myself? I would tell myself to go to the doctor, whatever I'm feeling. And you have to know what you're feeling. And the way that you know what you're feeling is, in my opinion, by journaling. Like any changes going on in my body. And it's not just your reproductive health. If I feel like, this is a great example, when COVID first started, I broke out like crazy. Like every other 5 days, I was like breaking out. And it was like a break, not only on my face, but like all over my body. I would just have acne. And I had a telehealth appointment with a dermatologist, and she was like, it's probably stress. And I was like, stress? And she was like,
I love when they kind of lump everything all in just one. Oh, it's just stress. Oh, you're eating too much.
Yeah.
It's just stress. You're breaking out. And like, they don't even like try to help.
I know. So I thought that too. But then I started, she talked about meditation. And I've always kind of been like, meditation, like I don't have time to be like, I can't.
Right.
So I tried it. And because I really did feel like just my anxiety was getting to a level that I was just like, what is happening in life? Like the world is about to blow up, and like I haven't even.
That was all of us too. And I literally wasn't saying anything, and then a friend posted something, and I'm like, okay. It just felt weird. It was just like a weird, like I feel stuck in the house. I feel like I can't do everything. The world is shutting down. It felt like I have to go fight people for toilet paper and paper towels. Like it's
exactly. And I don't think we realize how much that can impact our psychological state, and then therefore impacting our physical state.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that journaling, recognizing what's going on in your body, being in tune with your body is important.
Mm-hmm.
I think secondly, you have to find a medical team that is on your team. When I think about the way I was raised and think about how I was taught to think about doctors, like they are the authority figure. Like you don't question anything. What they say goes. They have all the knowledge. And I have really, really abandoned that thought process. Now, the way I look at doctors is that, yes, they have the knowledge. I did not go to medical school. They did. I did not go to residency. They did. However, we are partners in this together. And at the end of the day, you're not in my body.
Yep.
So I am the CEO of my body, and you all are my board of directors. So at the end of the day, I take your advice. Huh?
I said that needs to be on a t-shirt. I like that.
Right.
CEO my body, you're the board of directors. Yep.
Yeah, and a doctor told me that. And at the end of the day, I take your advice. But if I want to see somebody else or a second or third opinion, I have all right to do so without feeling that I'm somehow abandoning you or cheating on you or being dishonest to you. So you and I, as the medical provider, we're partners together, and we're going to be invested to make the best decision in my life. The third thing I would tell somebody right now is to support. The White Dress Project is here. That's what we do. We share stories, we support. And really, I think through doing that, we allow women to feel like they're not alone. Like seeing that picture with the woman in the shower having a blood clot, what that does is it settles your spirit, knowing that, hey, I'm not the only one that's bleeding like this. It doesn't mean that, hey, we don't need to do anything about it. It just means that I'm not in this alone, and someone else can understand what I'm going through. Someone else understands when I break plans. Someone else understands when I am in fetal position on the bathroom floor and I have to take a PTO day because of my period. There's just so much support and understanding in that I think that we need to share. And that's why finding support is important. And I say come to the White Dress Project, but for some people, it's not a public thing. It's being able to just find your tribe that you can talk to about, and finding the tribe that won't just be like, girl, just take some Advil, put on a heating pad.
Right. Actually like listening and
exactly
through it, not just kind of putting a Band-Aid on it and say, oh, just take some Advil, lay down. Like that's also a common thing. Oh, take some medicine, lay down, drink some ginger ale, go lay down. Like,
right.
No, that's not the remedy for everything.
Exactly. Like ginger tea is not the end all be all for everything. Or peppermint tea.
Right. So what are ways, I guess, we can support you, now that you bring up the word support? What are ways that we can support you and the White Dress Project, whether it's events, donations, legislation? I know you sent me some things. I'm going to put all that in the description box so people can access that. But can you just kind of tell us more about what we can do and how we can help?
Yeah, so sharing about our organization is always helpful because, like I said, we're a grassroots organization. Our entire board is made up of patients. Our advisory board is made up of doctors, but the people behind White Dress are all patients. Most of us have had fibroid surgery, and there's one board member who is thinking about, what her best options are. So we really express like the gamut of the fibroid patient, from the person who hasn't done anything yet and is in that watch and wait state, what do I do next, all the way to someone who has had a hysterectomy. Oh, wow. So we really understand the stories that we're sharing, and we really understand how important it is to support one another. So for the public, sharing about our work is always so important, because the more people know about us, the more people are educated about fibroids, and the more women and people who identify as women feel supported. This is a nonprofit, so any donation is always helpful to us to ensure that we are able to continue the work that we are doing. And it is also important that we put measures in place for research, and that's one of our big funding components. We have relationships with universities that are doing the scientific lab work around research for uterine fibroids. So those relationships we have to help support, because that's our mission, to fund research and to eventually bring this information back to our community so that they're aware of the latest drugs, they're aware of how scientifically and genetically are fibroids changing. Is it really connected to our diet and chemicals and all of that? And there's so much on the internet about that, but kind of dispelling some myths and misconceptions. But all of that takes funding, all of that takes work. So donations, telling someone else about us, and really supporting whomever is in your circle, because that ultimately, we're all 6 degrees of separation. So ultimately, they feel supported, somebody else will feel supported. And that's really just what we want to create in our community.
I love that. So what do you see as far as your goals for 5-10 years from now? Where do you see your organization? Where do you want to see fibroid awareness, as far as, maybe, I know you mentioned non-invasive treatments, hopefully that develops and things like that. What I guess are your thoughts or your hopes for the future, just with your organization and this topic in general?
Yeah, so the first thing I want to see is real appropriations and funding in our legislature for uterine fibroids. So there's a lot to be done in terms of research. There's a whole conversation around Black women disproportionately being affected with fibroids. And we all know the health disparities that plague Black women. And everybody kind of throws their hands up like, who knows why? But we need to figure it out. Like, there's no reason that the health disparities that are happening, the research gaps that are there, and all of them disproportionately affect Black women. So I really want to see that. And I want to be clear that fibroids doesn't only affect Black women, it affects all women, but Black women are disproportionately affected. We get fibroids larger, they're more symptomatic, and we're often the first ones to be offered hysterectomy. So there's all sorts of historical context about how Black women are treated in the medical sphere. So I want to see changes in that. Like, I want to see the research and the data be done to rectify those things that we know that are facts. And change that whole narrative around how Black women are treated, and specifically how are treated as it relates to reproductive health issues.
I love that.
I would also like to see outside of funding, because I think funding kind of domino effects into a lot of other things. Like, if there's more funding, there's more conversation, there's more research being done. So it kind of loops into how we deal with this health disparities gap. I also want to see fibroids really reach this level that cancer has reached, and heart disease has reached, and Alzheimer's has reached. And that's from like a marketing perspective. Like, I want everybody to be talking about fibroids because it's so common. So why shouldn't we be talking about it, so that you are aware that, yes, this could be my brother, not my brother, but my sister, my cousin, whomever, that is experiencing this. And if I'm aware of it, then I know how to support. And I want to see more recognition of the fact that even though this is not cancer, 1% of fibroid tumors come back cancerous, but there's there's so much more than death having to be the standard.
Yeah.
I remember there was a legislator who said to me, well, Tanika, maybe you should loop this into uterine cancer and maybe it'll get more attention. And I remember looking at him like sideways, like, why?
Absolutely.
Because 80% of Black women, 70% of white women, that's an issue. 80% of anything is a lot.
No, it's true.
Yeah.
8 out of 10 basically, which is crazy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. So when you think about, it might not be you, but there is someone in your circle that potentially, is suffering from uterine fibroids. That's a conversation that needs to be had.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would say those are the things that I want to see. Like I said, from a marketing standpoint, like for me, this needs to like blow up because there are so many women. We need to be talking about this all over. I spoke to someone from Nigeria the other day, and she was talking about how expensive treatment is and how she doesn't know anyone in her circle without fibroids.
Oh, wow.
So what are women across the world doing? What are women who are suffering and not at the socioeconomic statuses? What are you doing if you're homeless? Just because you're homeless doesn't mean you don't have reproductive health issues and fibroids, right? So what are
this is kind of like, at that point, if the resources aren't there or if the funding isn't there for non-invasive or even like affordable treatment for it, then people are just kind of left to just deal with it and go through the pain forever, maybe. So no, I agree with that.
So it's like being sensitive to how many areas this impacts and how if women aren't right, the world ain't right.
Yeah, that's true.
So we really need to pay close attention to these things that aren't necessarily killing us, right? And I would argue that you can die in surgery. Blood transfusions, every time I've had one, I've had to sign away, and whatever could happen to me. So there is an argument to be made that no, that when you get a fibroid diagnosis, it's not a death sentence, but there are so many other factors that you have to think about that could impact your life.
Right. No, I agree. And I'm hopeful that, I don't know, I think you're doing the right thing as far as making noise, as far as saying, hey, this needs to come to your attention. Women don't just suffer from breast cancer or ovarian cancer and things like that. This is also something that's super common. And I think just you continuing to fight and support other women, and as women continue to share their stories and seek the help, not only just from like a personal level, but like you said, in legislation, I think the government is important as far as providing the funding for the research so we can know more, and then from knowing more, we can then do more. So yeah, I think with anything else, it's like a issue for the community, not just one person or one organization. We have to definitely be there to help each other, just as sisters, just wanting to empower other women and things like that. So I'm hoping that we'll see that change in the near future. But I just appreciate all you doing. This was like an awesome conversation. It really like brightened up my day just to kind of hear you about your organization, and you're so like passionate about it, and it literally shines through every time you answer a question. I can see your passion and your heart in it, and just the amazing things that you're doing. So just congratulations.
Thank you.
Let people know where to find you on social media and your website, any links to donate and things like that. Just let us know where we can find you.
Yeah. I appreciate you saying that because like doing this work is like my story, like people often ask me why I started the organization, and I started it for myself. Like I started it because I needed the support. I started it because I didn't want to feel alone. I started it because I did feel alone. And I just needed support. So it touches my heart when I have these opportunities to talk about it and share about it, because I know that it does have the potential to help someone else. And that's important to me. Like, that's why we are here on earth, right? To help your neighbor. And all this other stuff that we get caught up with. It's really about what are we doing to help one another and how are we serving one another. So that I feel like this is my purpose, and it is connected to how I am supposed to serve others in this world. So yes, our social media. Our Facebook is the White Dress Project. We Can Wear White, and you can follow us there and learn about all the activities and events we have going on. Our Instagram, which is poppin', is at We Can Wear White. Our Twitter is WeCan_Wear White, and you can always reach us at any one of those platforms if you want to share your story. If you want to donate to us, there is a donate button right on our website, which is thewhitedressproject.org. We are a 501c3 organization, so your donation is tax deductible.
Awesome. Thank you, Tanika. You're the best.
Thank you,
guys, if you have any questions, send them to me and I can definitely forward it to her. I'll be sure to include all the handles and website to the White Dress Project below and where you can get connected. And I'll see you in the next video.